The Indianapolis Colts revamped their cornerback room this offseason, and they are set to have a big year under new defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you all for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Hello, everyone. My name is Zach Hicks, your resident film nerd of horseshoehuddle.com, and my partner Jake Arthur is our credentialed boots on the ground for the site. We are trugging along through this dead period of the offseason, guys, giving you our roster breakdown, going position by position, breaking down the top of the roster, the middle of the roster, and the bottom of the roster. So you have a preview on every single player heading into training camp late July and August. We are on the cornerback room today. So starting at the top, obviously with the starters, we have three guys that we believe in quite a bit, which is much more than what we could say last year, Jake, when looking at this cornerback room. Obviously, you have the big fish and Charvarius Ward at the very top. The Colts went out there, closed the deal for the first time on a big-time free agent under Chris Ballard, and handed out the biggest contract that Ballard has ever handed out in free agency. Kenny Moore returns for, his sixth year, I think, with the team, sixth or seventh year?
2017 was his first, so he's quite a bit into it.
I think one of the longest tenured Colts players on this team, coming back for yet another season. And then we have Jaylon Jones in here with the starters. We've been very vocal on this podcast all offseason that is an open competition for that second starter spot. But for today's show, we're going to have him as that locked-in starter on the other side. But Jake, when you're looking at this starting group in the cornerback room, especially compared to last couple years with the Colts, we got to feel pretty good looking at this group.
Yeah, it's kind of the inverse of the quarterback room where it's like two maligned players and it's like they have to have a quarterback, so somebody's got to win. But they actually have a ton of really good options at corner this year. I mean, you look at it, I mean, last year Samuel Womack wound up being their second boundary corner, but he's like your sixth corner right now. Yeah. So they're in really good shape right now. Charvarius Ward took an obvious step back last year after being an All-Pro 2 years ago. Had some personal tragedies he was dealing with, and he's been vocal about the fact that he was not in it mentally, but he feels refreshed. He feels this is a clean slate. So even if he doesn't get back to like All-Pro level, he can give you above average play at cornerback. Kenny Moore is about to step into a really significant role with Lou Anarumo. He's always been one of the cornerstones of this defense, basically since 2018 when he became a full-time starter. But Lou Anarumo uses the heck out of the nickel position. This is going to be a very DB-heavy defense overall, and there's going to be a lot put on Kenny's plate. So this should be pretty exciting for him. And then Jaylon Jones, if he's your second outside starter, cool. He's been counted on to basically be the top outside corner 2 years in a row, and now doesn't have to do that. He can get some lumps, and maybe people wish he wasn't out there all the time if he's going up against the Jamar Chases of the world and things like that. But now he's not going to be tasked with facing that top cornerback week after week. Like, he's going to be in a much more appropriate position if he is that starter. So their starting group looks excellent, because remember last year, this was the group we were screaming about. You're relying on too many injured guys. Boom, JuJu Brents gets hurt. Dallas Flowers coming off an Achilles doesn't look good, is cut already by the midway point of the season. So it's in a lot better position now than it was last year.
Right. I mean, at this point last year, we were looking at it saying, okay, Jaylon Jones, the one guy on the outside that you can kind of trust because he's a perfectly adequate player. But perfectly adequate is your number one and only guy that you rely on. Mm-hmm. Is not winning formula in today's NFL, especially in how much of a passing game it is. And now Jaylon Jones can slide in and be your second outside guy. And yeah, you say there could be some warts on the outside, and there certainly are some warts in Jaylon Jones's game, but how many teams are looking at their cornerback two and saying like, oh, this is a superstar that can't do anything wrong? I think Jaylon Jones being a cornerback two on the outside is a perfect role for him. That's exactly where he can be the player that he can be. And you're not going to be overly critical of your cornerback too, because that's not your superstar player. You're not paying him to be a superstar. You're not expecting him to be a superstar. That's what you're paying Charvarius Ward big money for. But last week, we did the wide receiver episode, or I did the wide receiver episode, and I went over this wide receiver room and said, like, hey, the Colts have this group of guys who are just perfectly crafted to their roles. You don't really have this like top end, top 5 wide receiver, but you can maybe get that in the aggregate. And when I look at this cornerback room, obviously corner is different from wide receiver in a lot of ways, but I kind of see a similar element there with this cornerback room where each guy is built for their specific role. You look at Charvarius Ward, you're going to be traveling with the number 1 receiver. That his job is to take that number 1 wide receiver out of the game and force offenses to go away from that top target. Kenny Moore is going to be that Swiss Army knife in the inside of the defense. He's going to get back to blitzing like he did under Matt Eberflus. He's going to be that playmaker that we know and love him to be. He's going to rotate the deep safety snaps sometimes. Like he's going to be all over the field like he was under Matt Eberflus and during the peaks of his career. And then Jaylon Jones, again, more off coverage, more away from top wide receivers, sit back in the zone, come up and make some plays on the ball underneath. I think these guys are crafted now to roles that fit them, whereas last year it was like, yeah, we're going to put the best 3 guys on the field, but we're going to drop into cover 3. We're going to drop into cover 4. Everyone just get back and come up and tackle, where this year, guys are actually suited to the roles they're going to play and make some plays on the ball. So, it's obviously different from the wide receiver room, but I do see a similar element where it's like, yeah, if Charvarius Ward is traveling with number 1 wide receivers, that's a great role for him. Kenny Moore just being more of a Swiss Army knife rather than being a static zone defender, I think that is more suited to him. And Jaylon Jones getting away from number 1 wide receivers, getting into more off-zone coverage where he can come downhill and attack the ball. I think these are just great roles for these players. And where you don't have a Sauce Gardner, you don't have a Pat Surtain, I think you have really good players in the aggregate when it comes to this Colts cornerback room.
Yeah, and I like that you said these guys are like perfectly suited for what the expectations should be in this new system. With Ward traveling with those number 1 receivers, the Colts are going to face a lot of really good receivers. Like week 1, to get Tyreek Hill, Cortland Sutton is coming up. You're going to have Calvin Ridley twice a year, Brian Thomas Jr., like Nico Collins, for God's sake. Like
Nico Collins has killed them the last couple years.
Yes, exactly. No matter what the Colts have thrown at them. And Charvarius Ward, throughout his last few years, like during his peak, has always ranked right up there near the top in like defended passes. This is a guy that is aggressive against the ball, and it's going to take that mentality against this caliber of receiver. So I think the Colts have done a nice job there. Kenny Moore, again, this is going to be an important role with Lou Anarumo. We saw last time that a coordinator was so outwardly expressive of needing big-time nickel play with Matt Eberflus. Kenny Moore was unbelievable. Like he was pretty good with Gus Bradley too. Maybe not so much the first year, but Kenny Moore was unbelievable. Earned the title of being the best slot defender in the NFL. Got paid like it as well. So Lou Anarumo, a lot of importance there. He's going to blitz him a lot as well. Like you mentioned, Mike Hilton was his nickel there, and Cincy was number 2 in pass rushes for nickels last year, number 3 the year before. Early in Kenny's career, that's one of the things he was known for, was being a really good pass rushing nickel. So I expect he'll get back to that. And then again, Jaylon Jones, who knows? I mean, he's not been a guy that turns the ball over a lot, forces a lot of takeaways, but, he's not been thrown at as much being the top corner, so to speak. So, I mean, he's got good length, and, I mean, he's got adequate athleticism, I would say. So if he's getting the ball thrown at him more, maybe that creates more turnovers. He's able to do that more often. I mean, he can do it. He had the 2 in the Bears game. That's his only interceptions. But, I mean, he got 2 in a game. So that's another thing I would like to see from him. If I'm the coaches, I want to task him with taking the ball away a little more this year, just because the amount of snaps he's played, you would hope to see that a little more.
Yeah, I will say one thing about this cornerback room, too, that intrigues me a lot is, last year with the Colts, and honestly in the whole Gus Bradley tenure, you can even go back to the Matt Eberflus tenure as well, the Colts struggled at forcing incomplete passes. Both of those defenses were very much structured to where allow the offense to catch things underneath, will come up and make tackles, and that's fine. They can complete passes. Lou Anarumo wants pass breakups. He wants 0 yardage gain on passing plays to force longer third downs. Now, when you look at this cornerback room, Charvarius Ward at the heights of his career has forced 10 plus, 15 plus, even 20 plus pass breakups in a season. Jaylon Jones last year was a highly disruptive outside corner when it came to forcing incomplete passes when he was targeted. And then Kenny Moore, again, getting him back to what he does well, I think can lead to him getting back to being a more pass breakup dominant type corner, maybe more turnovers as well coming his way, like he did under Matt Eberflus. So I think these guys are really well suited to the Lou Anarumo system. There's a little bit of concern with Jaylon Jones like being able to turn and run a little bit in the system, but that's why you have other players on the roster. And that's a perfect segue to our second segment, where we're going to talk about the guy competing with Jaylon Jones on the outside and also some other key reserves that have a chance to make a name for themselves this offseason, earn not only a roster spot, but some significant playing time.
Do you ever wish that managing your money felt easier? Well, with Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You could track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you can be a little proactive and actually build some wealth. A lot of you are probably in a similar boat as me. I've got a lot of big expenses coming up. I'm looking to move coming up this year. So like there's just a lot of me socking away my money that needs to be happening over the next several months. And Monarch is perfect. It helps me monitor everything, whether it's investments, savings accounts, checking account, everything in one place so that I could keep an adequate eye on everything and know what my actual financial situation is. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off of your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNFL for half off of your first year. All right, Zach, so this next group I'm going to refer to as the don't forget about these guys group, because anytime we mention a cornerback in this room that isn't these guys, someone always pops up and says, don't forget about JuJu Brents. Justin Walley is obviously a guy we've talked a lot about, but Samuel Womack as well became the starter for the Colts at outside for the entire year, essentially, when JuJu Brents got hurt last year. So the Colts do have some juice in this second wave of corners. And I mean, it's not, JuJu Brents, obviously, even if he does well this summer, you're always going to be waiting on that other shoe to drop, unfortunately, with his vast injury history. But when he's been on the field, he's been really good. He has that mentality you need in a corner to compete with even the best guys. One of his best games he's had in the NFL was against Davante Adams and the Raiders. So Justin Walley is a guy who we both think might be competing for a starting role sooner rather than later. By the end of the year, this could be a guy that's in the lineup as a fixture. JuJu Brents, again, was basically locked into that starting outside corner role for 2 years until he got hurt. So the Colts have been willing to have him out there. And then again, Samuel Womack is a guy that could play inside and out. Love having a guy like that in this depth area. That's kind of your TJ Carey now. Carey wasn't necessarily a guy you wanted to have out there as a mainstay, in your defense playing 60, 70 snaps, but having him as a fallback option is awesome. Again, a guy that could play inside and out.
I actually really like that comparison for Samuel Womack. I've never even thought of that comparison, but like when I think of how I view Womack like intrinsically or whatever when I'm watching film and just like the vibes around him, it is kind of similar to TJ Carey, where it's like, I know this guy is not an everyday starter in the NFL, but I love having him as a cornerback 5 or 6. Exactly. Maybe he's not a gunner. Maybe he's not like a perfect gunner or anything like that. But in terms of just having that depth there, especially with JuJu Brents' injury history, I like having a Samuel Womack. But when we're looking at these 3 role players here, I think the door is wide open for any of these guys. Mm-hmm. Justin Walley, we presume, is the favorite in this group to earn real defensive snaps in the regular season. But we do have to remind ourselves he is a rookie. And this is a defensive staff where, yes, they adore Justin Walley. They really love this player. But outside of Cam Taylor-Britt, they really never played young players a ton in their first season with the Cincinnati Bengals. You look at all the complaints over what DJ Turner, I think, was their first round pick a couple years ago, and how little run he got.
Miles Murphy, Dax Hill, all those guys.
Dax Hill, Jordan Battle. It took a while for him to get some run on that defense. So it takes a while under Lou Anarumo and his system to get some run as young players, unless you're a Cam Taylor-Britt. I've been very high on Justin Walley being that version of a player for Anarumo, but again, we can't count on players being the exact replicas of other players. So if there is a scenario where maybe Walley's not ready, or maybe this staff doesn't want to trust him with too much in year one, then that opens the door for guys like Womack and Brents to come in and really seize a spot. And one thing I want to throw out to you, Jake, here, because I think you and I are going to be on different sides of this, just given on how we've talked to each other. If it came down to it with me between Sam Womack and JuJu Brents, I think I would personally lead Sam Womack in that cornerback room. I'm not completely giving up on JuJu Brents, but when I look at what I want in this cornerback room, like I've already got a lot of size in Charvarius Ward and Jaylon Jones, and Justin Walley's got some decent size as well. Not great size, obviously, not JuJu Brents size, but decent size. And I kind of just don't want another slower corner in the room. Especially when you're going to be doing more man and more just asking corners to do more difficult athletic stuff. And a guy with his injury history too. And I just saw more good out of Womack last year than what I've seen from Brents in his career at this point. So personally, I would lean Womack, also with the gunner experience too that Womack has. I just feel like, to me, that's more of how I feel. But I feel like you'd probably go Brents in that situation.
Surprisingly enough, no. I'm in my old age, I'm definitely starting to get with the availability is the best ability thing. And as much you were one of the biggest champions for JuJu Brents. You loved him. And I mean, he was a really good player in the very small sample size, but not only during the season has he not been healthy, but throughout each offseason, he really hasn't been healthy. I mean, I think he's fine right now, but it was either minicamp or OTAs, missed a little bit of time with a groin or something, just some sort of soft tissue or something. But it's every little time this happens, it just continues to compound and forms your opinion on these guys. And at the end of the day, super talented guy who I think would be a great starting corner if he could stay healthy, but it's hard for me to trust you to go out on that field. And, let's say they don't have depth like they didn't last year until they had Sam Womack. That could have really screwed up a lot of things. The cornerback room is not the biggest problem on that defense last year, but if Sam Womack would not have managed to be the player he was, they would have been totally screwed because Dallas Flowers was cooked. He couldn't do it. So again, I like Brents better as a player, but I like Womack's versatility and availability a whole lot more. And again, both those guys can do some special teams, but Womack's been able to show it because he's been on the field. So believe it or not, I will go with Womack on that one as well.
Okay, yeah, I thought because you talked a little bit higher about Brents than I have this offseason, I thought you would go Brents there. But, this whole conversation might be moot because this might be the 6 corners they keep. They might keep the top 3 guys, keep the next 3, and then sneak a guy like Ballantyne, who we're going to talk about in our final segment, onto the practice squad and just go with that group this season. So it might be a moot point. And then, if or when the JuJu Brents injury happens, then Ballantyne can make it as the 6th guy after that. But yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, I do feel a lot better about Womack and Brents being cornerback 5 or 6 as of right now than what it was last year, where Brents was cornerback 1/2, whatever you wanted to have it as. And then Womack was claimed and then a starter right away, after a game. So I'm glad that we are talking about this as a depth problem rather than not even a depth problem, a depth conversation compared to it being about the starters on the team. So that's one great thing I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to have the experience in terms of, again, a guy like a Womack or even the intrigue of a guy like Walley at the bottom of this depth chart. And then even Brent's yes, I am a little bit down on him. I want this guy to stay healthy. But again, he's kind of like a lottery ticket at this point. You can just stash him this whole offseason. And if something clicks for him and he's able to stay healthy, the more the merrier. The more the merrier. You can always use more bodies at outside corner. I will say in particular about Lou Anarumo, compared to Gus Bradley, especially where Gus Bradley, primarily when he had a guy on the field, he kept that guy on the field for the entire game when it came to outside corner. Anarumo will rotate a little bit more, do more 3 and 4 cornerback sets on the field. So I do think we see a little bit more rotation this upcoming season. So that's where these guys can even factor in without an injury in front of them. And I think that could be a good way for these guys to get on the field and play some football this year.
Yeah, could be. And again, if they keep 6 or 7, like obviously I'm good with all those guys being there. It just, special teams is the ultimate X factor. But coming up, guys, we're talking about the bubble. There are a couple guys here who make a lot of sense. And, there's at least one really surprising one on here who could beat all of them. So we'll talk about that in just a moment. All right, Zach. So when we talk about the cornerback room, Corey Ballentine is like kind of usually the last guy we talk about. Like even in my roster prediction, I put him in over JuJu Brents, I think, when I did my most recent one after minicamp. And it's not about the defense. It's not about him being a corner. It's about him being likely a core special teamer. But when you look at it, David Long is there too. David Long and Corey Ballentine have somewhat comparable experience as defenders, but they're also core special teams guys. The Colts picked up Long last summer as well, about the same time as Womack, and he played 100 special team snaps for them. So I don't think multiple of these bubble guys make it because you can't have 100 corners. So I don't think it's necessarily a layup that Ballentine is your core special teams corner you put on there. It could be David Long.
Yeah, it could be Long, it could be Ballentine, or it could be Womack. If we're talking about Womack being the 6th corner, I think that's going to be
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the open competition this offseason is who can really take hold of that other gunner spot alongside Ashton Dulin, because obviously Dulin's going to be one of the gunners on this team. But that other one I think is wide open. It could be any of these 3 corners. Maybe a safety can jump in there and take it, but I think it's going to be one of these 3 corners. So really that last roster spot's going to come down to which of these guys can prove that they can win that gunner spot. Ballentine's done the most gunner work in the NFL among the 3, but all 3 of them have experience doing it. And like you said, Jake, I mean, David Long has the most experience with this special teams coach and with this special teams coordinator. So he does maybe have the inside edge when it comes to that, although Ballentine does have the inside edge when it comes to experience with the defensive staff. Him and Jerome Henderson overlapped with the New York Giants for a little bit. So I think this is going to be a good battle for the final spot. Like I would have put Ballentine and Long in the other section, but then we would have had nobody to talk about in this final segment. So we do have to separate it a little bit. But it never hurts having 2 guys who have played a lot of football. I mean, Ballentine, mostly special teams, but he's played a couple hundred defensive snaps. David Long has played a good chunk of defensive snaps. I think he's behind the starters. He's probably got the most defensive snaps in the room. Maybe him and Womack are probably really close together when it comes to defensive snaps in their careers. But David Long's played a good amount of football in his career. So these are guys where even if they don't make your roster, if you can get them on the practice squad, it never hurts to have guys who have just been on the football field during regular season action in your organization, because guys get hurt. We saw last year, Dallas Flowers didn't get hurt, but was released, and JuJu Brents got hurt, and they had to call guys up, and that's how David Long got on the roster and how he stuck last year. So, this isn't the NFL. Nobody stays healthy. It's good to have guys who have experience in the offseason program, and maybe these guys can get to the practice squad or maybe win out a bottom of the roster spot.
Yeah, because now at this point we're talking about corners 7 and 8. Like this is how you avoid a Bo Keys situation right here.
Yes.
But beyond these 2, Jonathan Edwards is a UDFA from, is it Tulane?
Tulane. Yep.
Tulane, okay.
Yeah, Indiana State before that though. So local when it comes to Indiana State. I think he spent 4 years at Indiana State, jumped up to Tulane last year, and the Colts love the athletic traits that he has.
I'm going to pretend I knew that as someone who's a mere 2 hours away from Terre Haute. He's, I believe, when you and I were talking about UDFAs who have a chance, he's another guy that has inside-out flexibility, I believe. Alex Johnson is the last guy on the list. Now, Johnson, just by virtue of guys ahead of him being unavailable during the spring program and just a lot of rotation, did get some occasional run with the 1s and 2s. Now, that's not going to be part of the plan. It's just simply an opportunity for, Ward wasn't a full go yet. I think Kenny missed some time. Jaylon Jones missed some time. So they just needed some guys to play in certain roles. But he's pretty intriguing. I believe was a UDFA last year. It's kind of a height, weight, speed guy. So, I mean, they could certainly do worse as like the 9th corner. So, I mean, he at least is a little bit interesting. Like he's got some traits that they can certainly try and work with. Considering I saw how they used him, I don't think there's really any throwaways on this group. Like I think it's a really, really solid group and is about as good a one as Anarumo could have hoped for coming in his first year with the Colts after the Bengals, systematically stripped away all of his good players as the time went on. Like they gave him a bunch of good players in his first couple years, but then stopped re-signing them after that. So the Colts kind of giving him the reverse treatment here.
Yeah, I will say with this cornerback room, I could see a very real scenario where, again, Lou Anarumo, he likes to rotate the corners a lot. He likes to have a lot of corners in the system. I think it could be those top 6 guys are the 6 guys who make the roster. And these bottom bubble guys, I think 2 of these 4 make it to the practice squad by the end of camp. And that's going to be your cornerback room this offseason, where if an injury happens, one of these 2 guys who are on the practice squad gets called up to be a special teamer, and that'll be how the season goes along. So I think Alex Johnson and Jonathan Edwards, they both project very well as gunners in the NFL. Edwards, fantastic height, weight, speed athlete. I think he played safety at Indiana State. Then he played a little bit more outside corner at Tulane. So the Colts do view him more as an outside corner. That's where they've had him this offseason, but it's kind of like a Marvell Tell type of experiment. We're going to see if this height, weight, speed guy can last at outside corner. I don't think they have any, thoughts of him being like a long-time starter in the NFL, but you're going to see what you can do with the height, weight, speed guide. And then Alex Johnson coming over with Jerome Henderson. Jerome Henderson, again, the DB coach with the Giants last year. The Colts brought him over this offseason. And again, another height, weight, speed guy out of college. So, the Colts like these guys as gunners, and they like the speed they bring and the experience that Long and Valentine bring. I just think from this position group from top to bottom, you're looking at a really well-rounded position group. Like it doesn't have, like it's not without its questions. There are certain questions in this group. Like, does Charvarius Ward get back to what he was? Does the second outside corner really solidify himself this year, whether that's Walley or Jones? And can JuJu Brents stay healthy? Those are legit questions, but this is kind of like a normal position group compared to how it was the last couple of off seasons with the Colts, where it's like, oh my gosh, is this undrafted free agent from the year before coming off a torn Achilles going to be the starter on the outside? Or, oh my gosh, this waiver wire guy is going to have to start in week 2. What the heck is going on with our season?
That's really crazy what they did at corner.
Right. Now we're looking at it, it's like, okay, former All-Pro Charvarius Ward, big free agent signing starting on one side. Really good young corner starting on the other side, Kenny Moore in the slot. Then we got some questions behind, but also some intrigue in Justin Walley, Sam Womack's like our TJ Carey. Like this is a real cornerback room in Indianapolis for the first time in like 3 years, with this team. So I like when I'm looking at this from top to bottom, I'm like, I keep like 8 of these guys with the organization this year, 6 on the roster, 2 on the practice squad, 1 vet on the practice squad, 1 young guy on the practice squad. Like, I'm feeling pretty good about this cornerback room as of right now. And I don't think I could have said that about the last 3 years with this team.
No, I think last year the questions were, the downside of the questions were resulting in catastrophe. Like if 1 or 2 of these guys goes down, they're screwed. And luckily, Samuel Womack was
even if one of them didn't get hurt. Like, look, right. I'm not saying JuJu Brents is terrible, but say JuJu Brents plays the whole season. Do we think it's that big of an upgrade? Like, is it that massive of a jump up? Like, it was going to be a bad cornerback room regardless. It's just when JuJu Brents went down, if they didn't find Sam Womack on the waiver wire, I mean, it would have been David Long starting the whole season on the outside.
Right. And that's the thing. Now you look at it, and they can afford to have a couple of injuries. Like,
we don't want it. We don't want it.
Right. Like David Long had to play snaps last year, but he's now part of your third wave of corners we're talking about here where he belongs, not like in the mix like he was last year. So, they're in a lot better spot. And again, even if they have a couple injuries, it'll suck, but I don't feel like they'll be totally screwed about it.
Yeah, they can actually survive some things at corner this year, where last year, I mean, even the group they were planning on going into the season with felt like they were treading water. This year, like the guys that they were treading water with going into the season are like competing for cornerback 5 or 6, on the team. Like that's normal. That's the way it should be, So I like this cornerback room. I think the Colts did a really good job of revamping it. Obviously at the neglect of other positions that we've already talked about or are going to talk about, obviously, in this series. But, at the end of the day, they did re-up this. They did change this cornerback room, and they needed it with Lou Anarumo. You can't bring Lou Anarumo over here and then give him the oft-injured JuJu Brents and then Jaylon Jones as his top guys on the outside. You needed to bring in more help, and they did. So you can at least appreciate Chris Ballard for finally giving some corners to his defensive coordinator going forward. But that is all we have for today. We're going to be back next time with, was it offensive lineman next, Jake? I think that's what
we did that. So we tight ends next, I think.
Tight ends next. Yeah. Okay, so tight ends, our next positional preview. Make sure you guys are tuning into that. And thank you guys for making Locked On Colts your first listen today and every day. For your next listen, check out Locked On NFL Scouting. As training camps get closer and moves are being made, host Kyle Krabs and Joe Marino will make you the most informed NFL fan this offseason. Find Locked On NFL Scouting on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get that insider scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you don't already, make sure you're following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, at Zach Hicks 2 on socials. Also, subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love your guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here tomorrow afternoon.